Mark here, and welcome to my laser room, where all the magic happens. And the magic being laser engraving on eggs is what we're going to do today. So it's Easter coming up. St. Patrick's Day is right around the corner as well. xTool is having a sale on their equipment. So I'll put all the links below for the sale, so you can check that out. If you're watching this video after St. Patrick's Day, xTool has a bunch of different sales that kind of pop up from time to time. So check on those links and they'll be updated as needed. Anyway, with eggs, so we have chickens here on the farm. I picked up brown eggs and I wanted to do I guess a Fabergé kind of type egg. This was my first prototype. We're going to do another one today that is a little bit more Easter-like. This one's got harsher edges on it, and there's a little chunk that's missing out of there. So this was my test. What I initially did is did a grid pattern that you can see here. So the grid pattern shows different strengths, power versus speed, and we have kind of a winner down here at the bottom corner where it's punched out. So now that we have those settings, what I did is I ran this one, and today we're going to do another one. So I have 2 eggs that I pre-emptied, just punching a hole in the bottom and then kind of blowing it out. So these ones are brown as well, so it should show up pretty well. Now, xTool also just released their 2.0 software on their xTool suite, their creative suite. So there's a lot of neat things going on there. One of the big things is the algorithm that they use for doing laser engraving. So when you're doing something, of course, it can take some time to go through and for it to do its laser engraving. They changed the algorithm, the way it works, the way it engraves. So it looks at the image and then it groups them into sections instead of just kind of going back and forth like an old dot matrix printer, if you remember those. It actually focuses in and does them in groups. So engraves sections, and it can speed up your timing tremendously. So as far as I know, no other company actually has this. The Lightburn software doesn't do it as well. So this is a huge leap. xTool has made quite a few leaps in the fastest laser, being the F1 laser, as well as this algorithm that they put in. So the tool that I'll be using today is the RA2Pro, and it's got a chuck here. It's not really meant for eggs so much. They do have this little adapter here that I'm going to use for doing Christmas tree ornaments, the round ornaments. You can engrave those as well. So what I actually did is I looked into my toolbox and I found this. It's a rubber washer or it's a rubber piece that goes over a bolt head. For whatever reason, it was in there, and I thought, well, this is perfect. So I put it in the chuck, and the egg will sit nicely into there to be nicely cushioned, and then this little guy will come over and close it up, kind of like that. So we'll line this up, and there are some issues that people have been having. I've been watching Facebook group about using the rotary tool. So I'll go over some challenges there as well, and how to properly line it up. So when using the rotary tool, the first thing we have to find is the diameter or circumference of the object that we are going to be working with, be it a mug or an egg. So I'm going to go by the highest point here. I have my fabric tape measure here that works great, and we're just going to wrap it around and look at how big it is. Now, these eggs are somewhat the same, but of course each chicken can lay a slightly different sized egg. So it's good to know your diameter or your circumference of each one. So we're looking at about 144 here. So 144 millimeters. Now I've pre-designed a graphic that I want to use on here, and I used 140 millimeters around because that was kind of the average size of the egg, and I did it about 40 millimeters high. So 4 centimeters. Now this laser engraver doesn't have the capabilities of doing multi or curved objects, but with that little amount of a curve, I should be fine. Now the S1 laser engraver does actually have capabilities of pre-measuring each individual point so that when the laser does go across it, it works in an arc, either up or down, depending on what you're engraving. Now, if you're doing a mug and it's got that narrow base to it, it will go and measure and find the lower part, and it will actually adjust as it's laser engraving. So the M1 I'm using has the honeycomb base, the riser base, so I can adjust my height. And then I also do have an air assist, which I likely don't need for doing eggs, but for doing wood, it will eliminate any kind of burn marks on your etching or your cutting. So here we go. We've lined it all up. I've put it to a height that I think will work. The laser engraver does come with this tool here. It goes from 0 to 30 millimeters, and the way this works is you want to move your laser head over your object, and you want to place this down. There's a little arrow down there at the bottom. You put that on your project, and at the top of the head you will see that we're about 4 millimeters. If it was up here, that's too low, so we'll have to raise it, and we want to be within this 30 millimeter marking. So I think we're good. We're lined up, so when we do our final measure, we should be in range. So we'll turn on the machine, and when we do, we will have a laser show up. And we will want to put that laser right on the peak so that we have the correct measuring, so the unit will auto measure itself. Okay, so here we go. The laser might not show up as clearly, but you should be able to see it. If I move this so the dot for the laser is directly, and I also want to make sure it's lined up sideways so it's in the proper angle to do the cut and it's not skewed. So there we go. We do have our dot right at the top, and this is where the auto measuring is going to take place. We're going to open up the new Creative Suite by xTool, and we'll get a look at that. A little bit of a different splash screen at the beginning here as it loads up. Once we're in, we can see this looks quite a bit different from the other version, the 1-point version. We can see here we've got some recents. We have projects here that are recommended for the equipment I have, the M1, so you can jump right into laser engraving and see how all these things are made. And all the support from the xTool community. So we're going to actually start a new project by clicking up here in the corner, and we're going to load up the software itself. And here we go. So if you're familiar with the old version, this might look a little bit different. You have to kind of get used to a few things here. Our machine is the xTool M1, which is connected now. And you can see here is here's our egg. So what we want to do is we want to bring in the egg pattern that I made up separately. It is asking me to scale it because it's too big. Because what I actually did is I based it on the 140 millimeters, but I made it 10 times larger. I always design my objects larger than they need to be because I feel it's always better to shrink them down than to enlarge them because you can get some distortion. So the first thing we want to do here, we've got this in, we want to go to processing, and we're going to process, we're not on a base plate or processing on a flat plane. So we want to select laser cylindrical. Now this is going to change things here. It's going to look a little bit different. And this line here can be confusing. This line is where the laser is going to sit. So of course the laser does not move. It goes into that central point, and the rotary tool actually does the movement. So you want to find the top point or the area where that laser, where we're doing the measuring, has taken place. And speaking of measuring or getting the height, doing the auto measure, we want to actually do that now because some of the camera view will shift slightly. And then, of course, you'll have to line everything back up. So we're going to jump into the auto measure function. So we're going to deselect what we have so it brings up this screen. And here's the distance. If you have to do a manual with that tool that I showed you, this is where you'd plug it in. But we should be able to get the auto measure. Here we go. It's completed. And it's showing a distance of 1. So we're going to jump over to the machine, and what we're going to do is we're going to put a little piece of tape on the edge of that laser, and that will help us line up in the program. Here we are here. I'm actually right on the money. So the laser is sitting right on that flat edge of the tape. You can't see it in this picture because it doesn't show up unless the lid's open. But I'm right on it. So if you look here, you can see the chuck and everything. The center of the chuck is actually here. So it can be a little bit confusing. Some people actually move this line and they line it up right over on the edge here. Because of course you've got this idea that you want to put it on your egg. So people actually line it up kind of like this. And what that is going to do is the laser is going to be etching on the side of the egg, and it's not going to be at the proper focal point. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this back over to where that tape is, and we know that is the top dead center. So now we want to line this guy up here. And we want to check the length of the image so that it wraps around properly. So here we want to make sure that we're locking it here. That little chain is on. And then, so it's going to be the actual width because it's this way. This will be the height and this will be the width. So we're going to plug in here. What were we looking at? 143. It was somewhere around that number. We're going to hit enter, and of course that's going to change our size. Here we're at 40.86. I measured the height originally for 40 at 140, so we're pretty close. So now we're going to line this up as central as possible. So that looks pretty good. We've got an even gap on top and bottom. We're good there, and I think that'll work good. We are actually not going to engrave it. This is a PNG image, and you can see here if I click on it, it only gives me the engraving, which I don't want. I want to cut it out. So what I'm going to do here is with that selected, down here you can see trace image. So this will actually turn it into what's called a vector. Now it's already preset and we can adjust this accordingly. We're going to zoom in and just make sure all of our lines here are present. Everything is outlined and everything looks good. So we will save that. And there we go. Now we have our vector saved. So what we can do now is select, this is score. So we're going to move this out of the way. And here you can see here is our vector and here is our original PNG. We don't need this, so we're going to select it and then just hit delete. And we are going to grab this and bring it down. Okay, looks like we're good. We're lined up. So with that now selected, we are going to select this easy panel here. And we are going to put in here 90 power and 5 speed. And then it'll be a pass of 1. So now that that's all in, we are going to close that. Okay, so now that we're all ready and set up, the one thing we have to make sure is, for the RA tool, you want to make sure you put in your circumference. So we want to go over, we're not using the roller, we're using the chuck. So here it's going to ask, the perimeter of it or the diameter of it. So what we'll do is we will select the perimeter, which is 143. Then what we're going to do is we are going to do our framing. So we'll select framing. And it says it's now all ready to go. The blue light on the unit is now flashing, so we'll go over, we'll hit that button. We're leaving that tape on there because we want to see how far it goes, and does it go right around, because I don't want it to overlap and I don't want a big gap in there either. So everything looks good. It looks like it made that full rotation. It centered itself with the tape on the side, then went around to about the same position. So everything looks good. So we are now completed with framing. Framing complete. And we are all set up and ready to go. Double checking our parameters at 90 and 5. And then I will hit process. And it'll come up. I'll remove the tape, of course, right before I start. But here is what it's going to do. So it's kind of showing the path here that it's going to follow. Of course, my biggest concern is that I've made too detailed of a pattern. And of course, it is an egg. So this is going to be kind of a learning. You may have to, or we may find out that I may have to either just etch the outside of the egg or expand my pattern a little bit so I've got a little bit more to hang on to. But we'll find out what happens. So we're all done, and just as I suspected, there's a little bit too much detail there. It looks pretty good, but the structural integrity of the center is pretty bad. So planning out your design, you expect when you're doing new things like this. And I thought that was just a little too tight, but I thought it was a neat pattern. So what I ended up doing is I ran another one, but I engraved the flowers, we'll call them. I still cut out the others, and this is what I ended up with here. So I've got the star and the little swooshes there cut out, but I laser engraved the flower at 50 speed and 50 power. So that actually turned out pretty good. So yeah, it's a little bit of trial and error, which is why these videos, as well as community groups like on Facebook, xTool Facebook community groups, are good to go and have a look and see what people are doing. There's groups for like the M1, the S1, the P2, the F1, all of the different laser engravers. And if you are interested in this kind of thing, laser engraving in general, then check out the links. I'll put them all down in the description for you. And until next video, have a wonderful one. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.